Yeah. Give it up one time. It's just cuter when kids tell the story, right? My favorite, everyone see The Gift of Frankenstein? That was my favorite one, The Gift of Frankenstein and Myrrh. Hey, what's up, guys? My name is John. I'm one of the pastors around here. Merry Christmas to you. Yes, lots of great stuff, including anybody's family just like throws down some amazing food. This is like the most wonderful time of the year. And nobody's family? Okay. Y'all need to come and chill with me. Okay. Hey, we're going to jump into the scriptures. If you're new with us, we like Jesus around here, like kind of a lot, unapologetically. And so it works that Christmas is all about, some of y'all are paying attention. Some of y'all. Christmas is all about, there we go. Hoop, there it is. All right, so if you wouldn't mind standing to your feet one more time as we read and honor God's word together. I know this feels like spiritual jazzercise, but don't worry. You get to sit for the next 20-odd minutes, and I'll have to stand up here so you can commiserate with me for just a moment. Now, the backstory of this popular narrative is as such. We're going to jump in. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 1. If you'd like to join along with us, you can do so in your Bibles. Otherwise, we've got the words up here on the screen for you, so no sweat. But basically, as the story has gone here, an angel has appeared to a teenage girl who finds herself pregnant. Now, this would be a bummer in the ancient world because she was actually engaged to a man that she had not yet been with. There are kids in the room, so y'all know what I'm talking about. And so this was sort of awkward, and so she goes to her betrothed, she goes to her fiance, and she's like, hey, babe, I'm pregnant, but it's God's baby. All right, so you're sort of tracking, and she's like, okay, you could have come up with a better story than that. But lo and behold, an angel comes to Joseph, and he says, hey, listen, she's not lying. Miriam, she's telling the truth. This is something that God is up to. And so this is where we pick up in the story, Matthew chapter 1, verse 22. Are you ready? All right, I'm a feedback kind of preacher, all right? So the more you talk, the shorter I preach, which means everybody has a much better time. Okay, so don't be quiet with me. Matthew chapter 1, verse 22, here we go. It said, all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emanuel. This was a prophecy given some 700 years before the birth of Jesus, as foretold by Isaiah in the Hebrew scriptures. And here it is happening. This term, Emanuel, means God with us. Now, when Joseph woke up from his sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, but he knew her not until she had given birth to a son. And he called his name, everybody say it with me, Jesus. Join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for the moments that we share together this evening. Would you speak to our hearts and show us and reveal to us who this God with us really is. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Turn to your neighbor, give him a high five, a little fist bump if you're more inclined and you can find your seat. A question this evening for us. Have you ever felt alone? You ever felt isolated? You ever felt alone? Anybody ever been there before? Lonely. You ever felt that? I remember last week, Joel Romulus. How many of you guys were here for when Joel preached? Man, that dude could preach. It was great. And so he shared about his favorite Christmas gift. And so I sort of want to share about mine, except it's a little bit different because it's my favorite Hanukkah gift. Some of y'all know I'm from a Jewish background. And so you're like, wait, there's a Christian pastor on a Christmas Eve service, a Jewish pastor at a Christian church. Welcome to Greenhouse. All right. But I grew up celebrating Hanukkah, right? I'm a Jewish follower of Jesus. And so I remember my favorite Hanukkah gift. I was about 14 years old, and there was this thing that my friends were all into called a GoPed. Has anyone know what these things are? All right, so picture like Dennis the Menace meets Evel Knievel. It's like, I've got a picture up here. It's like a scooter with a motor attached. Some of you parents are like, that's a horrible idea. Yes, but I finally, so I wanted, my neighbor had a GoPed, and his friend got a GoPed, and all my little neighborhood friends had GoPeds, but these things were expensive, so I was like, Dad, I'll do extra chores, and so I did everything I could to save up money, to try to get me a GoPed, and so finally I saved up all I could, and I came short, but it was almost holiday time. And so I came to my mom and dad, and they generously said, listen, give us what you got, and we'll see what we can do. And lo and behold, on the first night of Hanukkah, say that one with me, spit on your neighbor, you're doing it wrong. All right, the first night of Hanukkah, here I unwrap a GoPed, and I was elated. We put a little bit of gas in the gas tank, and off I go with my friend, and we're riding around the neighborhood, and we're doing what all the cool kids do. We don't know where to go, so we go to the library, and then we went to the other library, and we went to the basketball court, but there was no one there, so we went back to the library, and so we're just sort of driving around, and we didn't think too much about the logistics behind this GoPed because we're just so thrilled to be experiencing the joy of the wind in the hair that I used to have. And so, lo and behold, the GoPed begins to sort of stutter on me. And I didn't think much of it. I'm like, okay, whatever, it's malfunctioning, but we'll make it through. And so the GoPed, we go a little bit further, and the GoPed starts to shudder on me, and then it stops. And I realize that I am inescapably trapped in a neighborhood that I don't exactly know where I am. And so I come to the only logical conclusion of a 14-year-old pre-adolescent male. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Like, my parents don't know where I am. I don't know where I am. My GoPed just died on me. Like, this is gonna be the end of my life. Thankfully, I had a friend with me who was a little more level-headed and was like, hey, see that building? That's the library. Let's go call your parents and have them come pick you up. The story ended great, but I remember this feeling of like, man, what am I going to do? What's going to happen? And in retrospect, we can look back at 14-year-old John and be like, really, bro? Come on. But isn't that the condition of humanity? See, I think that's the reality of our story. See, ever since the garden, ever since the very beginning of time, we as humans tend and are tempted to think that we are far more alone than we actually are. When you look at studies, when you look at research that's done of our culture, people are feeling increasingly more isolated and separated and fragmented than ever before, and we live in what they call the connected age. Arguably, we are more connected than ever, and yet we feel more alone than any other epoch in human history. What's up with that? And so we tend to sort of feel isolated and alone and overwhelmed. But what if I could assure you this evening that you were never actually alone? This would be good news, right? This would be a welcomed source of good news. And friends, this is the beauty of the message this evening. If you're here joining us for the first time, or maybe a friend invited you, I'm so thrilled that you're with us because I have good tidings of great joy. You ready for it? All one of you. Come on now. Now I'm going to preach for like 2 more hours. I told y'all I like to talk back. Are you ready for it? All right. Y'all were a little too strong. You don't want me to stop that quick, man. Here it is. I've got one thought for the evening, and the thought is this: God is with us. God is with us. See, the message of Christmas, we get a little excited about it because the message of Christmas is not just that God loves us. That would be incredible. The message of Christmas is not just that God gets us, which if you got a spouse, you're like, I don't even get them. That's a miracle. And your spouse is like, amen, just don't say it too loud because you might get cut. But if the message of Christmas was just God cares about us, all of these things would be great in and of themselves, but this is not the message of Christmas fundamentally. The message of Christmas, friends, is far greater. It is that God is with us. Turn to your neighbor and say, God is with us. So I want to break this down into 3 points. Number 1, I want to start with God. If you're taking notes, if you're jotting down thoughts on the back of your bulletin, I want you to jot this down. God. We're going to start with God. I remember, some of you know I have a boy, a son. My wife and I have our first child. That was my wife doing the announcements, by the way. Isn't she awesome? Can we give a hand? Isn't she lovely? Woo. And so I remember our son Liam, he's about 1 year and 3 or 4, almost 1 year and 4 months now. And so I remember when, to my utter joy and delight, he uttered his first syllables in the human vernacular, English. And I remember I was changing his diaper. That was a stanky job, but somebody's got to do it. And he looks up at me and he says, can anybody guess? Y'all already know. Dada. Dad. And my little heart, man, I don't know, it just, apparently that's the sound my heart makes. My little heart went, and it just melted, and I was like, oh, man, because my boy called my name. But I think about what happened when I was a kid. Growing up, my dad was Dad. And I remember the moment when I realized that Dad, my father wasn't just Dad, but he was actually Rabbi Neil. When he would say something and people would get up and move, and I'm like, Dad, what's going on? He's like, well, son, I'm actually the boss here. I was like, oh, okay. See, to me, he was Dad. But when I realized that his identity was not simply Dad, he was actually Rabbi, and he was Rabbi Neil, and he was Boss Neil, and he would get things going. See, when we're talking this evening, we're not talking about an angel that's with us, or just simply an angelic being. This is God. God. Creator. If I was a Pentecostal preacher, I would say, God. This is God. Like God. You say, John, what's the big deal with Christmas? What's so important about this story that we have people in every continent, in every culture that are celebrating this same day? Because we're not just talking about some isolated person, as great as they might be. We're talking about God. This is God. The scriptures sort of reveal the components or the aspects of his character. It tells us that God is omnipotent. These omni words meaning he is all powerful. God can do anything. He is limitless. There is nothing outside of the scope of possibility for God. He is God. He's not only omnipotent, he is omnipresent, which means he is at all places, at all times. Some of you grew up and you felt like your mom was that way. She just was always there, right? This is God. He is omnipotent. He is omnipresent, but he's also omniscient, which means he knows everything. Now, this is sort of awe-inspiring and might wow you, except when you realize that everything means everything. All of our highlight reels and all of our blooper reels, all of our achievements and all of the skeletons in our closet that we like to think didn't really happen, all of the thoughts that we would never even articulate. God is omniscient, meaning he knows it all, and yet he loves us, friends. This is incredible. You say, why do people get so excited about Christmas? Because maybe you're here and you're an agnostic or an atheist or from some other faith. We're thrilled that you're here joining us. See, there's something about humans where regardless of where we're at on the spiritual spectrum, we realize that if God were real, perchance, if he actually loved us and he was actually God, man, that would be incredible. That would be amazing. This is God. Number two, it's God with. This is God with. Thomas Jefferson's one of the founding fathers. He actually had a strong hand. He was one of the guys that actually started the Declaration of Independence. Now, many people know that the various founding fathers had different faith backgrounds. Thomas Jefferson himself was a theist, meaning he believed in God, but we know that he had a very specific orientation with his faith called deism. Deism. Now, this idea of deism is that God certainly exists, but God sort of got things in motion and then ultimately sort of stepped back from humanity, stepped back from his creation and said, hey, y'all figure it out. I'm taking a lunch break. This is deism. Now, what's interesting, I sort of nerd out on social surveys and sociology and research studies. And so as they're looking specifically even at North America, they're finding that atheism, which is the idea that God does not exist at all, is increasingly losing traction. And what's gaining traction in our day, in our world, is what they're calling essentially agnosticism, or people that say, I don't really have a religion. What they're finding is that people in huge numbers are saying, you know what, when you look at science, when you look at medicine, when you look at astronomy, when you look at all the stuff in the universe, I feel like it would take more faith to say God doesn't exist than to say God does exist. So yeah, I totally think there's a God. Can we know him? Who is he? Is it the God of Islam? Is it the God of Judaism? Is it the God of Christianity? I don't know, and I don't even really know if it matters that much to me. What we're finding is increasingly in our culture, Thomas Jefferson has been resurrected. The prevailing religion of our day is essentially deism. Yeah, I think God's real. I'm not arguing God. I don't know, he's just kind of there somewhere. And the beauty of Christmas, the beauty of the Christmas story is that this is not the God of the Bible. See, the beauty of the God of the Bible as revealed in the Christmas story is that this God is with us. Not separate, not aloof, not standoffish. He is actively and intimately involved in the lives of the creations that he loves, humanity. He's with us. See, since the Garden of Eden, what's happened is we've been without God. And we've been without hope, and we've been without peace, and we've been without goodwill, and we've essentially been without. But this is the God that is with us. There are multiple Greek words for this idea of with, and I'm a nerd out here, put on my little Bible nerd glasses, all right? There's different words for this Greek term with. This word that is used specifically in this passage, this idea of Emanuel, means in very close association or fellowship or relationship. It's more than just proximity. This is speaking to a deep closeness of relationship. In speaking of this God and Jesus, who is the embodiment or the image of the invisible God and his relationship that he desires with humanity, it says this in Proverbs 18. It says, one who has unreliable friends will soon come to ruin, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. In speaking of God, it says there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. I remember when this reality came and intersected with my life. A lot of us here, we're not just religious people that like the idea of religion. I'm not just up here because I just like to do this. We've actually encountered God in some very real ways. And I remember when this idea of God being with us really intersected my life. I was a sophomore in college at the University of Florida. Go Gators. And I was there, and we're sort of hurting, so Lord have mercy on us. But I was there, I was at UF, and I got a phone call. I'm staying in my apartment, college apartment at Campus Club, and I get a phone call, and it's my best friend from high school, and he says, hey, man, I'm on top of a building right now, and I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I won't be seeing you again. And before I had a chance to get a word in, he hangs up the phone. And I remember, and I know this is an intense story, I remember sitting in that space and sitting in that moment, and as tears begin to fill my eyes, I'm sitting there because there is nothing that I even know what to do. I don't know where exactly he's at. I don't know who exactly to call. What do I call 911 and say, hey, I'm just sitting there, and in that moment, if you've ever been in a spot where someone you love and care about is going through something like that or going through something difficult and you feel utterly helpless, you know that's one of the worst feelings in the world. And I remember sitting there in that moment, and I dropped to my knees. I'm there at my bed. And I just remember the only thing at that point I could do, I'd begun a relationship with God, and I just began to cry out to God. I said, God, if you're the only one that I know can do something right now. Can you please help? Can you please respond? Can you please do something? I'm in boohoo crying. And I'm sitting there. And I can't explain this in scientific terms. I can't quantify this on a spreadsheet. But in that moment, God was with me. In that moment, I mean, as real as if my very own father had come up alongside of me and knelt down and put his arm around me, there was a marked sense of God with me. And it's not like everything got better. Thank God my friend survived miraculously. He did jump and he did survive. It was a crazy story. He loves God now, and God's using his testimony in amazing ways. Yeah, so that's good. The story ends good. Very good. But I remember walking out of that bedroom when I finally dried my eyes and came to a place where I said, God, I can't do anything, but I trust you, and I thank you that you're with me. And all of a sudden, what was just theoretical pie-in-the-sky religion became the most real thing in my life, as real as my own family. God was with me. And I want some of you to know that maybe you've grown up in a religious household, maybe you haven't. Maybe you've been investigating faith and spirituality for some time, or maybe this is your first time stepping foot in a church in your entire life. Whatever the case might be this evening, friend, there is a God in heaven who has been with you your entire life. And you've maybe never even known it until now. And he invites us into relationship with him. This is the beauty. I'm not saying that life is always going to be easy. I'm not saying that life is always going to be perfect. I'm not saying that you won't have any problems. I'm not going to just give you some TV preacher spiel that, man, if you just get Jesus in, then everything will be perfect. That's a lie. Sometimes life will get even worse before it gets better. But Jesus' promise is in the midst of difficulty and pain. He did not promise perfection. What he promised was his presence. And for those of us that have experienced this, you know that that is the best thing you could ever have. Third point, this is the God that is with us. I think it's interesting here that it's not just the God with you or the God with me. This is the God with us. See, we live in a culture that's very individualistic. As North Americans, we tend to think of things in terms of me, myself, and I. But in the midst of a culture that is all about me and the individual, it's not the God with you or the God with me. It's the God. Some of y'all are picking up on that. It's the God with us. See, here's the story, and I need you to catch this, because if you came and you've sort of been feeling like you've been wandering through and you haven't been able to put your finger and you feel like you've just gone in circle after circle after circle. See, this is the reality of this human experience. Sometimes we need the faith family around us to remind us of the God that's with us. The beauty of this faith walk, the beauty of this life, and we get this, right? This isn't spiritual, this isn't religious, this is human. We need community. We need other people around us. This is the God with us. We need God and we need the family of God. This is the God with us, gathered together, corporate, not just an individual thing. Listen, if you came here and maybe at some point this evening you've been inspired or you've met a few people and you said, man, these seem like really good people. Listen, I'm the pastor of this church. If I wasn't a pastor here at this church, I would go to this church because the people are genuine. We'll drop all sorts of balls. We'll make all sorts of mistakes, but there's genuine hearts here that love Jesus and are really trying to love people. If you've come in and you felt like you haven't exactly gotten to where you want to get and you feel like life hasn't exactly panned out the way you want it to pan out, let me pose to you a question. Where are your friends? Who's the community around you? Show me those friends and I'll show you your future. This is the God that's with us. I remember I was working for a charity foundation based in Toronto, Canada, before I moved back here, and I would go different places in the world for them. This foundation dealt with the poorest of the poor in different marginalized countries around the world, and so I remember I spent several months for them in India. I didn't get down to God's home country in Kerala, so one of y'all have to take me there, all right? But I got to go all the rest of the places, and I was there in India. And it was one of probably the most intense experiences of my life. Working with an organization that was investigating huge accusations of human trafficking. And so we went there with a documentary film team to gather some of this commentary. And so I remember sitting there and we were particularly interviewing one woman. Due to poverty and circumstances beyond her control, she had been sold by her parents into bonded labor. Bonded labor very quickly turned into human trafficking. She had been bought and sold for the majority of her life, and we're there gathering her story, and as you can imagine, she is distraught. She's weeping, and we're sitting there and we're trying to be sensitive, but we're also trying to gather her story. She had wanted to share her story to raise awareness about what's happening, to help other women that were like her in her position. She had been brought out at that point and rescued. And so she's sharing her story, and I remember it got to the end of her story, and she's crying, and we're all teary-eyed, and it was just this awkward situation because nobody knew what to do. What do you say to somebody who spent the majority of their life enslaved, sold by their parents? And so we're sort of there, and it's just this really weird scenario, and our hearts are breaking, but we don't know what to do, and our translator, this woman who was with us, steps out from behind. She was just sort of in the shadows helping to translate so that we can get narration. She sort of steps out and begins speaking to this woman, begins praying for this woman, begins sharing hope with this woman. And by the end of their time together, our translator, who was just sort of in obscurity in the background, ends up becoming the hero of this whole story. And so we get done and we're walking out. I was like, that was amazing, but how did you know? She said, well, John, as a kid, I was trafficked. She said, I was able to speak with her. I was able to connect with her. I was able to pray with her because I understand her. And friends, this is the moral of the Christmas story. This is the beauty of what we find in Jesus. Unlike any other faith, tradition, or religious background, this is the God who understands. This is the God who understands. See, this is, different religions will teach different things, and so the idea is that if you can muster up enough good things, then you could sort of work your way up to God, and you could clamber and climb your way up to the top of the mountain. But God realized that that was not a possibility or an option for us. And so he came down. See, the moral of the story is before we get the good news of Christmas, we need to understand the bad news, which is this: sins are disastrous. And this includes big sins like human trafficking and somewhat what might seem like small sins. Any sin or rebellion or pushing away of God's ways and his legislations and his rules is a disaster. And it says in the scriptures that ultimately it brings death. It begins as a death spiritually on the inside, a death emotionally, a death to relationships, and ultimately it's a death for all of eternity. And I have friends who are agnostics or atheists who will say things like, well, Jon, I mean, if God created us, and I love these conversations because they're genuine, we're talking. I remember one friend, he said, Jon, if God created us, if he's really God, like you're talking about, he would understand. Like he would get it. Like we're fragile creatures. Like we can't help ourselves. He would understand. Which is the message of the gospel. He does understand. In fact, he understood so much that unlike any other religion where we try to get there and we try to make it happen on our own and we try to make our way there ourselves, this God understood so much that he came down. In the Message, it says it like this in John 1, the Word, Jesus, became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. And God so loved, and God so understood, and God so cared for you and me and every single person on this planet that when he realized that in our own good works and efforts we could not make right the wrong that sin had done on the inside of us, he came down. And this is why we celebrate Christmas. This is why we remember with joy. This is why all these songs are so filled with joy and hope. Because we realized that in left to ourselves and our own devices, we were left without hope. But God came down. And the God with us enabled us to find the freedom and the life and the joy we were created for. See, this isn't just a theory for God. This isn't just some religious experience. God truly and deeply feels and understands us, because he chose to become like us. And he came down and stepped down from heaven and entered in the form of a little baby in a dirty manger, was tempted, scripture says, in every single way that you and I are tempted, and yet without sin. Max Lucado says it like this: if our greatest need had been information, God would have sent us an educator. If our greatest need had been technology, God would have sent us a scientist. If our greatest need had been money, God would have sent us an economist. And if our greatest need had been pleasure, God would have sent us an entertainer. But our greatest need was forgiveness. So God sent us a Savior. Friends, this is the God that is with us. This is the God that is with us, tempted in every way like you and I are, and yet without sin. And so as a result of that, whenever anybody gets humble enough and desperate enough to say, God, I'm sick of trying to do this on my own. I can't do it. I give up, and wave the white flag of surrender, Jesus says, I can work with that. That's all I need. Because I came down to pay the price that you could not pay, so that I could give you the life that you could not earn. Friend, do you feel isolated, alone, tired? Are you at the end of your rope? Friends, there is great news for you this Christmas season. This might be the turning point of your entire life. There is a God that is with us. And all you need to do is come to him. It says in Matthew 11:28, Jesus said, he said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Let's pray together. If you'd bow your head and close your eyes just for a moment of quiet and concentration. God promised to be with us, but you need to let him in. See, God is all-powerful and all-knowing and omnipresent, but he's also a gentleman, and he doesn't force his way into any life or any heart or any situation. You need to let him in. In Revelation, it says this. It says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone would hear my voice and open the door, I'll come in and dine with him. This in the ancient world was the most intimate form of friendship, sharing a meal with somebody. This is what Jesus is saying to every single one of you under the sound of my voice this evening. If anyone would hear my voice, I'm standing at the door knocking. And if anyone would hear my voice and open the door, I will come in. If tonight you want to let him in, the scripture gives a word for this. It's called repentance. Basically, what this means is up until this point, you've been doing things your own way, on your own power and your own strength and your own abilities, making your own calls, calling your own shots. And you say, you know what, Jon, this isn't working. This is not working for me anymore. I'm done with this. I am going to throw up that white flag. I am going to wave surrender. Then you repent. It means changing your mind, turning from doing things your own way, turning towards Jesus for guidance and direction and leadership. It means surrender, to make him Lord, leader, forgiver. If you're in that boat, I want to give you an opportunity to respond and to make that decision right now. If you're here and you say, Jon, I came in disconnected from God. Christmas has just sort of been a tradition for me, a religious thing, a cultural thing, but at some point this evening, something has shifted in your heart where you realize, I don't just need religion, I need God, and I need him with me right now. He is here and available, friend. And if you'd like to make that choice and that decision to surrender to his plan and his will, and I gotta let you know it is better than your plan and your will, but to make him Lord and leader in your life, I wanna pray with you right now. If that's you, in just a moment, I want you to just shoot your hand up in the air. I'm not gonna make you do anything crazy, but if you wanna make that decision to follow Jesus, on the count of three, I just want you to shoot your hand in the air and wave it at me. And I wanna pray with you. 1, 2, 3. If you say, Jon, I want to respond. I want to follow Jesus. If you raise your hand, even right there in the comfort of your seat, you can begin to call out to God. Say, God, I hear you. I need you. I've been doing things my own way, and I'm so sorry. I want to follow you. Jesus, forgive me. Teach me to follow you. Now I want you to look up at me for just a moment. We're about to close out, and we're going to close out in the final chorus. In just a moment, we're going to dismiss, and we got hot chocolate and cookies and a photo booth for the family and all sorts of fun stuff. But if God's at work in your heart, if you sense God at work in your heart, before you walk out of this auditorium, can I encourage you to get some prayer? We're going to have a team of people up here, some of our prayer partners who would love to share with you and talk with you through your next steps and what it means to follow Jesus, to enter into relationship with him. We would love to pray and talk with you. Maybe you have some sort of a need in your life. Maybe it's a miracle. Listen, we've watched God do miracles right here in this auditorium time and time again, and we would love to pray and agree with you for that. But I'd invite you to come forward. So if you all could stand to your feet with me, and if I could get our prayer partners up here. And if you raised your hand, or maybe you didn't, but you feel like you could have or should have, as soon as we begin singing this final song, the altars are open. You're welcome to come forward and receive some prayer. But church, why don't you join us? And Jamie, why don't you lead us as we sing the final song together?